بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. This week we start off with the ghusl of a woman and how that is different from a man. In terms of normal ghusl, a woman is the same like a man, except that there is a difference when it comes to a woman who has had a hayd or nifas, where there is blood that is involved. And as men, we can probably not speak about it because we don't know the effect of it. And the examples that I've given is given in the examples in the time of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. But that the blood of the hayd or the nifas creates a smell, and a woman is encouraged to use a strong kind of perfume in order to get that away. But we'll understand as we go along, inshallah ta'ala. The hadith is narrated by Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha أن أسماء بنت شكل سألت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن غسل المحيض فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم تأخذ إحداكن ماء وسدرتها فتحسن الطهورة ثم تصب على رأسها فتدلكه دلكا شديدا حتى يبلغ شؤون رأسها ثم تصب عليها الماء ثم تأخذ فرصة ممسكة فتطهر بها. The Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam in the hadith of Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, she says that this girl by the name of Asma bint Shakl, she came to the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam and said, Ya Rasulullah, how do you take a ghusl after you've had your hayd? So the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says, the woman that does that, take water and perfume, meaning today we use soap, today we use shower gel, when we wash, but means something that smells nice. You clean yourself with it. فتحسن الطهورة, make sure that you are clean. ثم تصب على رأسها فتدلكه دلكا شديدا. Then you take the water and let it go over your head and you rub it intensely. حتى يبلغ شؤون رأسها ثم تصب عليها الماء. And you make sure that that water goes through your hair, onto your scalp, onto your skin, that it goes right through till there. Then the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam told her, then take a piece of cloth and put musk on it and remove the effects of the blood that was probably still on the skin, right? So that it gives a good smell. So Asma, being not sure what is it that the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam meant, she then asked her again, كيف تطهر بها? How do I clean like that? So the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam responded in like in a shy way and so on, and said, Subhanallah tatahari biha. And sometimes even as imams, you get all of these kinds of questions from the women's side, and it can sometimes be, you have to think how you answer, because it's not things that you are familiar with in terms of hayd and nifas, except what we learn in fiqh. And all the questions that the women have in terms of hayd and so on needs to be answered, and the imam needs to stand ready to answer that type of question. So she says, the Nabi says, take a piece of cotton and put musk on it and you wipe over there where the blood was, so it will give a nice smell. So she then says, no, how do you do that? So obviously the Subhanallah, just clean yourself and so on. So Sayyidah Aisha said, then I understood that she didn't really understand. And she told and said, wherever the blood is, the marks, whatever, you just rub them. She continues to ask, and then, so therefore then, how do you then clean yourself in terms of janaba? So this is now totally different, because this is now husband and wife that slept together. And the Nabi ﷺ again says, any one of you take water and perfume, and you clean yourself, and make sure you clean yourself properly, and make sure that the water goes onto your head, and you rub intensely, meaning that you rub till the scalp and till the skin of your head, and then you finish it that way. So Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha then remarked, and she says, Ni'man Nisa. Ni'man Nisa, Nisa al-Ansar. How good is it the ladies of the Ansar, لم يكن يمنعهن الحياء أن يفقهن في الدين. They do not let shyness come in their way in order to know their deen. So there is a limit where you can say, I'm too shy to ask, but you can't continue doing the wrong thing. There must be a point where you ask. You remember what Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, when he had a secretion all the time, he was shy to ask Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, and he asked one of the other Sahaba to ask my question. Right? And we dealt with the wudu with that. So you can never be too shy in order to know your hadith, to know your deen. So in the hadith is complete dalil for a woman who has had a hayd or a lady with nifas. Now I'm sure that probably in their time they didn't have quite the type of covering that our women have in our time in terms of hayd and nifas like it was in that time. Because in our time, the sanitary pads that the women use is quite very helpful in today's time, as opposed to probably what was at that time. So the hadith is a dalil that it's permissible for a woman to take something with a perfume smell to wipe after she has washed herself, to wipe there where the blood was, in order to, so that the smell of the blood is not there, and the smell of the musk will then take the place of that, right? I suppose it's probably for women would be embarrassing if that smell were to be there, they come in contact with others that know it, right? As far as the private parts is concerned, it is also washed, like we said, with the men, that it is washed, making sure that your private parts is clean, whether it be soap or shower gel or anything like that. Why is the Nabi clean that you do that? So that there is nothing that remains that can cause you harm, and cause the woman harm. Because it can cause inflammation, it can cause itching, and women go through all kinds of infections and so on in their life. The next question that we have, if a woman has long hair, what does she do with the plaits and braids that she's done into her hair? If she has long hair, what I understand from the women, and I asked quite a couple of women so that before I sit here with you today, it is quite a job if you have long hair and the hair is plaited or it is braided, in order to loosen it and then do that whole job again. So now let's come to the fiqh part of things in terms of when a woman has plaits or braids with a long hair and so on, does she have to loosen her hair in order to take a ghusl? And from our fiqh point of view, it is not compulsory for her to loosen her braids or her plaits that she has, because of the difficulty and the inconvenience that it will cause. And says the ulama that our deen is built on easiness. It's not about yuridullah bikumul yusr وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. That Allah wants things easy for you, and Allah Ta'ala do not want things difficult for you. So therefore, what does a woman then do in terms of our fiqh, in terms of the ghusl? Says the ulama, for a woman then to make sure that the head is completely covered with water, lots of water, until that water goes through onto her skin of her head, and she is certain about it. And if she's not certain whether the water did go to the skin, then she uses more water and more water until it does reach the skin. If she, after all of that, is still feeling unsure, did the water reach my skin or not, then the ulama says then it will be better for to rather loosen the plaits then, or the braids, because the water in terms of the hadith of the Nabi ﷺ must come as far as the skin is concerned. Now there is a hadith of Abdullah ibn Umayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that this news came to Sayyidah Aisha. That Abdullah ibn Umar, he was ordering the women that if you're going to take your ghusl, then you have to loosen your hair. بلغ عائشة رضي الله عنها أن عبد الله ابن عمر يأمر النساء إذا اغتسلن أن ينقضن رؤوسهن، فقالت يا عجبا لابن عمر يأمر النساء إذا اغتسلن ينقضن رؤوسهن أفلا يأمرهن أن يحلقن رؤوسهن. لقد كنت اغتسل أنا ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من إناء واحد ما أزيد أن أفرغ على رأسي 3 إفراغات. Sayyidah Aisha says, after Abdullah ibn Umar had ordered the ladies must loosen their hair or must loosen their plaits when they go take a ghusl, she then says, what is this about Abdullah ibn Umar stating things like that they must loosen their hair? In other words, where does it come on that women must loosen their plaits and their braids? Why don't you somehow order? This is her response. It was very fast with Aisha. She says, why don't you somehow order them to cut off all their hair? So she said, I was taking a ghusl with the Nabi ﷺ in one container, and I only threw water over my hair, and 3 scoops used to be enough. 3 scoops used to be enough. So therefore, from a deen and a fiqh point of view, that it is not wajib, it's not compulsory for a woman who has plaits in order to loosen it. Then we come to the next point. When we've taken a ghusl for a fard action, for a fard ibadah, is it necessary to take a ghusl for a sunnah ibadah after that? Right? In other words, let's assume it is Friday morning and I take a ghusl. I'm in a state of janaba, so I take a ghusl for the janaba. But it is also Yawm al-Jum'ah. So do I take another ghusl for Jum'ah also with that one? Says the ulama that if you have taken a ghusl for janaba or for hayd, then that ghusl is enough for the ghusl of Jum'ah or for the ghusl of Eid. If you've taken a ghusl for janaba or for hayd, then that ghusl is enough for, well in this case it's janaba, is enough for the ghusl for Jum'ah and for Eid. But if you've taken a ghusl for Jum'ah, then you are not free from janaba. If your niyyah was, you're taking a ghusl for Jum'ah, and your niyyah wasn't, and then you would have to take another ghusl, because the ghusl for Jum'ah is not going to be sufficient for a ghusl for janaba or for hayd for that matter, and nifas obviously, right? Because the ghusl for janaba and for hayd and for nifas is fard, and the ghusl for Jum'ah and for Eid is a sunnah. So therefore, a sunnah will not be able to be suffice for a fard. A sunnah action, in terms of this, is not sufficient for a fard. And a fard is sufficient for a sunnah. If I may say it that way. Sunnah can be fard. So if a person is going to make niyyah for janaba, you make niyyah for janaba, for a ghusl for janaba, and you make niyyah thereafter also for Jumu'ah. Right? But it will be suffice. So if a person is in a state of junub, if a person is in a state of junub, what is it permissible for you to do when in a state of junub? What can you do? And the ulama lists quite a couple of things that you can do when you're in a state. And sometimes one thing, these are light things, but wallahi we get questions about this. Because not everybody understands. So therefore, if a person wants to cut their hair, permissible even if they're in a state of junub. And remember we said junub or janaba means that a husband and wife that have slept together. So if they have slept together and not yet taken a ghusl, it's permissible to cut the hair, it's permissible to cut the nails, it's permissible to even walk in the street, it's permissible to go to work, except that permissibility does not cause you not to be clean at the time when a walk comes in. Because when a walk comes in, then you should be clean, you should have taken a ghusl in order to perform that walk. But the best part is obviously to take a ghusl as soon as possible. The best part is to take a ghusl as soon as possible. Why is that? Because shaitan is always busy with this wiswas, whispering in the ears of those that require a ghusl and trying to tell you that you are cursed if you don't have a ghusl, or that Allah's doors of rahmah and maghfirah is closed to you while you don't have a ghusl, or whatever shaitan whispers in the ears of men and women. That is why there's a nice story actually about the Battle of Badr. And at the Battle of Badr, the battle was with Banu Khafif. Some of the Sahaba fell ill, fell asleep, and they fell asleep, and in that sleep they had an ihtilam. Everybody remembers the word ihtilam. An ihtilam. Why I say that? Because there was a question so that the rest of the people understand. And I forgot that we did that offline. That someone had a confusion between the word istilam towards the Kaaba and the word ihtilam. So ihtilam means a wet dream, but if we're not familiar with the Arabic terms, and that kind of means confused around whatever the case would be. So that's what I mentioned. But it was the Battle of Badr, and the Sahaba had fallen asleep, and they had an ihtilam, some of them, and then Shaitan came in between them and said, you know what, the meaning of this is, when they woke up obviously, you are going to be destroyed, because you're now in an unclean state. This is going to be your destruction, because Allah is not going to help you now. Your du'as is not going to be accepted now. So Allah Ta'ala wanted to remove that from them, that wiswas of shaitan. And Allah Ta'ala had sent down water from the sama, lots of water from the sama, and they could, with that water, cleanse themselves and then feel almost like a relief. Okay, alhamdulillah, I'm going to jihad. If I'm not die now, then I'm in a clean state. I'm not in a, in a janaba state and things like that. So Allah Ta'ala wanted to take away that wiswas of shaitan. And Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Anfal, ayah number 11, إِذْ يُغَشِّيكُمَ النُّعَاسَ أَمَنَةً مِّنْهُ وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ وَيُذْهِبَ عَنكُمُ الرِّجْسَ الشَّيْطَانِ وَلِيَرْبِطَ عَلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتْ بِهِ الْأَقْدَامَ. What I've done is, I thought I was going to copy for you that story out of the tafsir books so that it gives you an idea of what has happened here. Because the Sahaba, okay, let's hear the story. First of all, this slumber overcame them. Why is it that they needed that? We will hear. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala reminds the mu'mineen, the slumber that He sent down to them was as a security. A security for the fear that they had suffered. Because they feared the multitude. Remember Badr? They were approximately 300 and the mushrikeen were 3 times their amount. So how are we going to survive against it? So they genuinely feared. So they feared for the force, the power of the enemy. And here Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala now says that after أنزل عليكم من بعد الغم أمنة, after you had stressed, we sent you safety and security. من بعد الغم أمنة نعاسا يغشى طائفة منكم وطائفة قد أهمتهم أنفسهم. So some of you slumber overtook them. What happened? Abu Talha says, I was amongst those who were overcome by slumber. During the battle, that was the battle of Uhud, the sword fell from my hand several times. I kept picking it up several times. I also saw the companions, their heads were all nodding and so on. And Al-Hafiz Abu Ya'la narrated from Ali radiallahu anhu, who says, only Miqdad had a horse during Badr, and at some point I found that all of us fell asleep except the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, who was making dua, making salah under a tree, crying to Allah Ta'ala for assistance. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said that the slumber during the battle is a security from Allah. In other words, if you had just a little sleep, then you feel like revived. You feel refreshed, you can face. Because if you're tired, then you can't concentrate. So Allah Ta'ala caused them to fall asleep so that they can have that little bit of sleep, right? So He says that when Allah grants you slumber during a battle, then it is security, it's protection for you, brings you contentment. But when you feel slumber during a salah, you feel I'm going to fall asleep, then you must know that is from shaitan. That is from shaitan. So Qatada says slumber affects the head, while sleep affects the heart. So slumber overcame them, the mu'mineen. And this incident is well known in this ayah. It is describing the battle of Badr, indicating that slumber also overcame the believers during the battle of Badr. Therefore, it appears that this will occur for the believers whenever they are in stress, so that their hearts will safe. So in other words, whenever they are facing any kind of danger, up until today, those who are in jihad, if they are too tired, Allah Ta'ala will cause them to fall asleep. So that was one part of the thing that happened. The other part of the thing that happened is that the water came down. Now, Ibn Abbas, he narrates, he says, when the Nabi arrived at Badr, remember that the Mushrikeen were there before them. So they had taken over the wells of Badr. So the Muslims couldn't get to any water and things like that. And at the only place that they could get, there was a sandy patch that was there, and the sand was very loose. Very loose. And the idolaters, they had taken over them. So the Muslims, they felt they were tired. The horses can't walk in the sand, and we're talking about a big piece of ground. The horses can't go in there, and they can't walk properly in there, and whatever. And Shaitan is just causing this frustration in their minds with, you are going to lose. Look where you ended up. On the sand, the horses can't even move and nothing like that. You are going to lose, even though the Nabi is a monster. So, when they had fallen asleep, they couldn't get to water because the water was taken up by the mushrikeen. So Allah Ta'ala sent down a heavy rain, allowing them to drink from it as well as to clean themselves from it. Allah sent this heavy rain down upon them and also to remove this whispering of Shaitan. But what it also did was, the loose sand that was there, it now became more solid. And the ground on the mushrikeen side became more loose. Almost like muddy. It became more loose, and their animals were now having a difficulty in moving on that ground. Not only that, Allah Ta'ala also sent 1,000 malaika to come and help them. And 500 of that malaika was with Jibreel alayhi salam, and another 500 was under the command of Mikael alayhi salam. And in another narration, Urwa ibn Zubayr said, Allah sent down from the sky rain on a sandy valley. That rain made the area where the Nabi ﷺ and the Sahaba were, it made the ground firmer, and so therefore it wasn't difficult to move as before. Meanwhile, the part that the Quraysh were camping on became difficult to move on. Allah Ta'ala sent down the rain on the mu'mineen to help them in the situation. So the rain settled the dust and the ground became firm. So all of that to give us an idea in terms of what had happened when, or at least on what the people could do in terms of when they are junub. Can a person make dhikr in the bathroom? The ulama says it's permissible to make dhikr in the bathroom as long as there's no toilet in. Now you remember the old days? The toilet was never part of the bathroom. The toilet was outside. Or even in the house was separate. Right? It was only in our time that we brought the toilet into the bathroom. So if there's no toilet in, then halas, you can under the shower, people must have long singing stuff and whatever under the shower. But dhikrullah subhanahu wa ta'ala is permissible if it's only a bathroom. But if there's a toilet in, then it is not permissible. Let's come to the husband and wife. Can they wash together? Can a husband and wife wash together? Now you've heard where Sayyidina Aisha said, me and the Nabi we washed in one container. So it's permissible for the husband and wife to wash together. Actual fact, it even goes as far, you remember what I told you? What is dealt with a leak, meaning that when the water goes onto you wipe on your arms and wherever the case may be. It's even permissible for the wife to wipe the husband's back or for the husband to wipe the wife's back, as long as there is no feelings of desire at the table. If there is, then they cannot wash together. As long as there is no feelings of desire that comes into them. So if a person is in a state of junub, quickly, if a person is in a state of junub, then there are certain things that's haram for you to do. And obviously the first of that is salah. Whether it is nafil salah, sunnah salah, whether it's farud salah, whether it's salatul janazah, whether it is salah for shukr, the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says, La yakbarullah salah bi tuhur. Allah does not accept the salah without you being in a clean state. Now that we have hajj on our hands, tawaf also. It's not permissible to do tawaf if you are in a state of junub, state of janaba. The Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam says, At-tawaf salah, the tawaf is salah. Illa anna Allah ta'ala halla fihi al-kalam, except that Allah ta'ala made permissible talking in. فَمَنْ تَكَلَّمَ فَلَا يَتَكَلَّمْ إِلَّا بِخَيْرٍ. So if you were to talk, then only talk good things. The next thing is to stay in the masjid for long periods of time if you're in a state of junub. Then it's also not permissible. Salama narrates the hadith. دخل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم المسجد فنادى بأعلى صوته, the Nabi called by the top of his voice, إن المسجد لا يحل لحائط ولا للجنب. That the masjid is not permissible for a person that has the haid or for a person that is junub. So we are starting to come into this as far as the masjid for the ladies with the haid. But the ulama in contemporary times says that if a woman knows that she is not going to soil the carpet and she wants to listen to a dars or whatever the case may be, then it's permissible. But there's a long talk on that, right? But if the person is in the state of junub, it's permissible to walk through. So let's assume that the person lives on the masjid and needs to get to the showers or whatever, and he has to walk through the masjid in order to get there. Nothing wrong with that. Allah Ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَقْرَبُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنْتُمْ سُكَارَى حَتَّى تَعْلَمُوا مَا تَقُولُونَ وَلَا جُنُبًا إِلَّا عَابِرِ سَبِيلٍ حَتَّى تَغْتَسِلُوا. Don't come close to salah if you're in a state of sukara. When your mind is not with you, the person is taking drugs or wine, intoxicated. When the mind is intoxicated, or you're not because of the things that you've taken, حتى تعلموا ما تقولون, so that you know what you are saying. And also don't come close to salah, a person that is in a state of junub, janaba, إلا عابر سبيل, except a person that walks through the masjid, حتى تغتسلوا, until you have taken a ghusl. The next one is to touch the Holy Quran as it is, just the Quran like you see it there without, except that if there is a covering over it, or it's, you know, we have the Quran bags and things that we keep in, then that would be permissible, but you cannot directly touch the Holy Quran. The same with reading the Holy Quran. We have the Quran open in front of you. Ali ibn Abi Talib, karamallahu wajhah, he says, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يحجبه لا يحجبه شيئا من القرآن إلا الجنابة. Nothing prevented the Nabi from the Quran except janaba. In other words, it required a ghusl. Also, قال رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم توضأ ثم قرأ شيئا من القرآن ثم قال هكذا لمن ليس بجنب فأما الجنب فلا ولو آية. Says the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam had taken wudu and then recited from the Quran and told them this is the way, but not permissible for a junub to read from the Holy Quran, even if it's an ayah. Even if it's an ayah. But for the girls and the ladies who learns Quran, the ulama makes a distinction, and we will touch on that also at a later stage. Who learns Quran, that it is permissible for them to read from the Holy Quran only for reading. So what they would do is, some of the girls would then put gloves onto their hands to page the Quran. Or they would take a pencil, and they would page the Quran with a pencil, and that is only for ta'aleem, only for learning. May Allah Ta'ala make us all min al-muttaqin, wa min al-muslimin, wa min ibadihi as-salihin. Amin ya Rabbil Alamin. Any questions?